Hi, my name is Riza, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity to talk about our work at the National Center for Text Mining, or NACTEM, at the University of Manchester, which is headed by Professor Sofia Ananyado. So this talk will be focused on our work on Argo, which is a text mining platform or workbench, which now has support for web annotations. And towards the end, I will also talk about our involvement in a European-funded project called Open Minted, or Open Minded, some say, which allows us to promote the interoperability of annotations. So I will start by giving an overview of the Argo text mining workbench, which is basically a generic platform. And by that, what I mean is, when it was designed, it wasn't developed specifically for a specific use case or application or domain in mind. Rather, when it was developed, the only consideration at the time was the overarching aim, which is to basically take some textual or unstructured data and to put the information contained in that data into some structure so that it could be more accessible and searchable for users. So to that end, Argo has a number of key features. So sorry, the formatting seems off because of the difference, I guess, in PowerPoint versions. But anyway, that's supposed to be a library of processing components, basically tools which do some natural language processing or text mining. And then any developer, not just our group, can contribute to this library of processing tools. There's also a facility for diagramming or for creating workflows. So basically the idea is to string together these different components and to put them into pipelines which do a certain job. Argo is compliant with the UIMA standard, or Unstructured Information Management Architecture, which is an industry approved standard for interoperability. Argo does remote processing. Everything which is being run or executed in Argo are done on remote servers or cloud. And finally, Argo has obviously some support for manual annotation, which allows users to go to an interface, such as what you see here now, and look at the document and create, delete, or manipulate the annotations. So in Argo, every annotation task is implemented or defined as a workflow. And an example can be seen on this slide. So workflows in Argo are modular, meaning each of the components, so each of those blocks that you see on this slide corresponds to a component which does a specific or elementary task. So in Argo, workflows are modular. These components, or any of them, can be, they're pluggable and interchangeable. So if you want to replace, let's say, the parser with Google's new parser, that should be possible in theory. Workflows are customizable. Every one of these components have parameters which allow the user to specify the corpus of their choice, the annotation scheme, vocabularies, export formats, and so on. And they are reusable. They can be shared with collaborators, and some of them, many of them can even be deployed as web services. Workflows in Argo can be categorized broadly into three. Some of them are completely manual, meaning all of the annotations are provided by a human curator. Some workflows can be completely automatic. Maybe you don't need the human annotator and you completely trust automatic tools to do the job for you, then that can be done in Argo as well. But you can also have a combination of both, where you have you try to leverage automated support from tools, natural language processing tools and text mining tools, but at some point you want the human curator or annotator to go in and say, this is correct, this is wrong, I want to revise these annotations. So how is a workflow actually implemented in Argo? So this is a screenshot of Argo's workflow editor. On the left-hand side, you see the library of components, and each of those are these NLP tools that I was mentioning earlier. If you click on any of them, you will see the description on the right-hand side telling you the input and outputs expected by the tool. In the middle, probably the most important part, is some sort of a canvas which allows you to add any of these tools on the left, to rearrange them and to connect them with each other using the ports that you see here on the screen in green. As you can see, multi-branch workflows are also supported. And if you click on the orange spanner button, that gives you access to that allows you to specify the parameters or to customize the specific component. Okay, so recently we have introduced support for web annotation, meaning we have started to implement some components which act as input readers for remote resources such as social media platforms like Twitter, let's say if you want to do some sentiment analysis, and something which downloads full papers from the Europubmed Central or EPMC. And more importantly, I should say we also have support now for serializing or saving the annotations in the open annotation format, allowing us to interoperate, or at least to promote interoperability of annotations. So anyway, now I'm going to talk about a specific use case where we applied this new support for web annotation. So I will first describe what the task is about. So the task is about annotating the names of metabolites, which is a special type of chemical compounds, basically products produced during metabolism, from full papers from the Europubmed Central Literature Database. These names then should be grounded or disambiguated against a specific controlled vocabulary called KEBI, which is an ontology, by assigning identifiers to these names. And in doing this, we want to take advantage of automated support from the tools that we have available. But then we also want to allow human curators or annotators to manually revise and validate these annotations. And finally, we want to publish any resulting annotations in an annotation store. So that task was implemented as the following workflow, what you see on the screen right now. So it begins with the component which downloads the full papers from EPMC, followed by some pre-processing tools which perform text segmentation and part-of-speech tagging, followed by more semantic tools which recognize the actual metabolite names and assign KEBI identifiers. And then we have the manual annotation editor, which opens up the interface for allowing humans to revise the annotations. And finally, we have a serializer, which writes the annotations to the annotation store in open annotation format. So just to, again, this is the interface for manual revision. So this supports basically the tagging or the labeling of the words, I should say, or the tokens in text, and saying that this is a metabolite name, this is not, this is what you gave me is wrong, I want to remove that. But also there is an interface which allows you to connect to remote vocabularies, such as in this case KEBI, so that if you want to correct the identifier which was presumably wrongly assigned to a name, you can do so. And finally, apologies for the very crude formatting, but this is these are some examples of annotations contained in the Open Annotation triple store. So basically, the reason why it's not pretty, doesn't appear pretty, is because basically it's not really meant for human readability, but more of like for machines. But you can see the usual parts like body, target, annotated by. And if I focus on one of them, for example, let's say the target, then you will see that we use two different types of selectors. One is the text code selector, which specifies the prefix and suffix, basically the text surrounding the annotation, and the position selector, which specifies the character offsets in the document, and of course the source document. And for body, you can see the identifier assigned to the annotation and the fact that it is a metabolite. And also there's a way to explore the annotation scheme. So for example, if I click on metabolite there, that will tell me that this metabolite is actually a chemical. And then obviously, because it's an RDF store, it's also available or accessible as a Sparkle endpoint. And this is an example of a query which retrieves all of the metabolites or lists down all of the metabolites in that annotation store currently. So, okay, so the motivation for basically having this support for writing annotations in open annotation format, the motivation for that is basically twofold. So first, we were in a previous collaboration with the EBI, the European Bioinformatics Institute, where we were tasked to basically give them text-mined annotations from the literature. And I think the idea is to enhance or to enrich the search system of EPMC. But I believe that is still some sort of ongoing work, but we have delivered the store to them. And the second motivation is to foster interoperability of resources in the context of the Open Minted project. So that's the next thing that I will talk about now. So Open Minted, some say open-minded, is basically a European funded project consisting of 16 different institutes from Europe, whose main aim or goal is to basically develop a new platform or infrastructure where researchers can discover, create, reuse, and share knowledge which have been extracted on text from scholarly and scientific literature. So the story or the motivation can be depicted by this figure that you see here. So essentially, considering scientific literature alone, every 30 seconds there is a new paper being published, and because there's just too many of them, every paper has basically only 50% chance of being read by somebody else apart from the publishers, 10% chance of getting cited. And so the idea is, if you have this sea of papers or literature, it's actually very difficult to discover or to get to the documents of interest. And so that's the first hurdle that we want to basically overcome. But once you have this data set, this smaller subset, another challenge, of course, is to analyze them semantically to get the concepts and relationships you're interested in. And finally, how to make this new knowledge or insights available to your users. So a number of challenges are being addressed in Open-Minded, and they can be summarized into three. Firstly, again, discovering all of this corpora. We know that there's a plethora of corpora, lexica, vocabularies. There are so many text mining services and tools out there. And people describe them in generic or domain-specific ways, so we want to kind of standardize that. And again, if you have so many tools, again, these tools are implemented in different languages. They conform with different formats. And of course, there are licensing issues, obviously. So obviously, as a developer or as a user, you are restricted in terms of what you can do, depending on the licenses. So Open-Minded is very much community-driven. We have identified 4 areas from which we draw the use cases from, namely scholarly communication, life sciences, agriculture, and social sciences. And every step of the way, they are involved telling us, the user requirements up until evaluation. On a final note, so Open-Minded is divided into 4 working groups. There is a working group specifically looking into an inventory of metadata, of resources and tools. There's a working group looking into or studying different specifications for representing corpora and different resources. Another one specifically working on workflows and annotation tools. And last, another working group working just on licenses. So the reason why I put up this slide is because I have been asked that you are invited to basically participate, to give feedback in this, and they're very open because until now they're looking for experts to give them inputs. So yeah, thank you very much. That's all. So I would welcome any questions.
All right, we have some time for questions from Riza.
Peter Murray Russ. Very nice to see what's happening here. Now, I have 2 questions. The first is, what is the license under which all this software is available? Is it available under a completely open license? Because last time I looked, it wasn't. I'm talking about Argo and what Matt attempted.
So Argo, you are right. Argo is not open. But this is why we are participating in Open-Minded, because part of the work is to look into how we can make it available in an open source manner. But
Right.
Currently now, no, because
Right.
this is still work under.
I will make a comment. One of the major models you use is Oscar 4, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
You know that I wrote it, don't you?
Yeah.
It would be nice actually to have a little acknowledgement of that. And there is also a general feeling that if people create open source software, we've taken 10 years to develop Oscar 4 and released it completely under Apache 2 Open. That was in the hope that we would generate an open community where if you give to it, you would get back. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not angry about it, but I would say, please try and return to the community what you take to the community where possible.
Yes, definitely I agree. No, sorry, because of the time constraints, I didn't have time to basically acknowledge everyone. I mean, I should also acknowledge EPMC and stuff. But in the papers where we discuss all of this work, we always acknowledge Oscar 4 and all of the other tools we integrate.
Just have a slide, even if nobody reads it, because when they read the slide afterwards, then you say thank you to the people who contributed to the effort.
Yeah, noted.
Could you go to slide 13?
13.
Oh, sorry.
That's the
slides.
one?
Yes, so you have here a way to disambiguate information saying I use this different knowledge base. In some cases, a user may want to say within one knowledge base, there are 2 suggested links, but I want to be able to choose one link. Now my question is, in the workflow you had, it looked like that when a user does this revision, when it's put in the output and that's it. But actually what I want as a user, I want to provide feedback to the analytics tool. I want to tell the analytics tool next time you processing content with me as a user, produce with the same knowledge base a different link. Is this type of parameterization may need to be able to store within the annotation output that there was this user feedback, and then use this annotation output to feed back into the analytics tool again. This raises questions how to store user feedback. Have you looked into this feedback loop with analytics tools?
Not as part of this work, but there is a different project which is looking into that called Empathy, basically looking into metabolic pathways, which is exactly like that, where the feedback or the corrections, I should say, from the user will basically go back into the tool so that the next time, because most of the tools we use now are machine learning based, so the next time they can kind of retrain and relearn from those corrections to improve the performance.
All right, let's take one more question while we're transitioning to the next presenter.
Actually, it's more of a comment on the previous question, which is I do agree it's really important to get user feedback on these things, but I also think it's important to separate what's been done by a machine with what has been done by a human and make that clear to people. Another thing that I like to try and separate is the annotation itself from the things that you can do with it. So in the examples shown there, the annotation, it's the provenance of the annotation that is the link to Kebi, but of course there's many other things you could do with a chemical like a drug or something like that that's been annotated. So I think if we think of these things in a layered way, I think we should be able to build those kinds of tools that you describe.